The storm arrived out of nowhere. 1 minute, I was sitting in my kitchen eating a late dinner after a long day of electrical work. The next, the sky turned black and rain slammed against my windows, so hard it sounded like someone was throwing rocks at the house. Thunder rolled across the neighborhood. The lights flickered once, then twice, then everything went dark. I sighed and reached for the flashlight I kept in the kitchen drawer. Working as an electrician for nearly 15 years had taught me one important lesson. Power outages happen, and panicking never helps. I had just switched on the flashlight when someone pounded on my front door. 3 sharp knocks.
Urgent.
Desperate. I checked the clock. 10:47 p.m. Nobody ever visited me that late. The knocking came again. I opened the door. Standing on my porch was my neighbor, Claire. She was completely soaked from the rain. Water dripped from her hair and jacket. But it wasn't the storm that caught my attention. It was her face. She looked frightened. Not the kind of fear caused by thunder or darkness. Something deeper. Something personal. "I need help," she said. Lightning flashed behind her. For a brief moment, I could see tears shining in her eyes. And that was the night everything changed. My name is Ethan Brooks. I was 38 years old and lived alone in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland. My life wasn't exciting. I worked hard, paid my bills, fixed things, and enjoyed the simple routine I'd built for myself. Claire had moved in next door about 6 months earlier. She was beautiful in a quiet way. Not flashy, not loud, just naturally elegant. She drove a nice car, left early every morning, and often returned home long after sunset. We had exchanged polite greetings a few times, but that was all. She seemed friendly enough, just distant, like someone carrying a burden she didn't want anyone else to see. That night, she stood in my doorway looking like she had run out of options. "Come inside," I said. Relief flashed across her face. "Thank you." She stepped into the house. I handed her a towel. "What happened?" "My security system won't stop screaming," she said. "The backup battery kicked in after the power outage, and now the alarm keeps going off. I've tried everything." "That's all." She looked embarrassed. "I know it sounds silly. It doesn't." The truth was, I could tell there was more to it. People don't knock on strangers' doors during storms unless something else is bothering them too. But I didn't ask. Not yet. I grabbed my toolbox and followed her through the rain. Her house was larger than mine. Modern, beautiful, and strangely empty. The alarm was deafening. Within 20 minutes, I found the problem. The backup battery had failed. A simple repair. When the noise finally stopped, silence filled the room. Claire closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Thank you, Ethan." "No problem." I packed my tools and headed toward the door. But before leaving, I noticed something. She wasn't moving. She wasn't asking me to stay. But she wasn't asking me to leave either. She stood staring at the dark windows. Alone. Uncomfortable. "Storms bother you?" I asked. She forced a smile. "A little." I knew that wasn't the full truth. Still, I nodded. "Well, if you need anything, I'm right next door." For the first time, her smile looked genuine. "I appreciate that." A few days later, I found a basket on my porch. Inside were homemade blueberry muffins. A handwritten note sat on top. "Thank you for helping me, Claire." I smiled. The next morning, I left a note on her porch. "Best muffins I've had in years. Ethan." That simple exchange became the beginning of an unexpected friendship. Over the next few months, we started talking more often. Sometimes we'd meet while collecting mail. Sometimes while working in our yards. Other times, one of us would find an excuse to stop by. The conversations grew longer, more comfortable, more personal. One Saturday morning, I was repairing part of my fence when Claire appeared carrying 2 coffees. "I guessed black," she said. "You guessed right." She handed me the cup and watched me work. "You always seem busy." "I could say the same about you." She laughed softly. The sound surprised me. I realized I had never actually heard her laugh before. "What exactly do you do?" I asked. I own a consulting company. I nearly dropped my screwdriver. A company? She shrugged. It's not as impressive as it sounds. Over time, I learned she employed dozens of people and managed projects worth millions of dollars. She was successful, smart, driven, but whenever she talked about work, she looked exhausted. One evening, we sat on my back porch watching the sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold. Claire looked unusually thoughtful. You ever think about slowing down? I asked. She stared toward the horizon. Every day. So why don't you? A sad smile crossed her face. I don't know how. Something about that answer stayed with me, because it sounded honest. Months passed. The friendship deepened naturally. Neither of us rushed anything. Sometimes she'd bring dinner. Sometimes I'd help with repairs around her house. Other times we'd simply sit outside talking for hours. The more I got to know her, the more I realized how lonely she was. Not because she lacked people in her life, because she lacked people she trusted. One rainy evening, she knocked on my door carrying an old cardboard box. Can you help me organize something? We spread photographs across my dining room table. Family vacations, birthday parties, childhood memories. As we sorted through them, I noticed her growing quiet. Then I saw tears forming in her eyes. I waited. Eventually, she picked up a photo of an older couple. My parents, she said softly. I nodded. They passed away 3 years ago.
I'm sorry.
She looked down at the picture. I never really dealt with it. The room fell silent. Then she continued. After they died, I buried myself in work. It was easier than feeling everything. For the next hour, she talked. And I listened. No advice.
No solutions.
Just listening. Sometimes that's what people need most. When she finally left that night, something had changed. The walls around her heart weren't gone, but they were lower. And slowly, over the following weeks, I saw a different version of Claire. She laughed more, smiled more, spent less time hiding inside her house. And somewhere along the way, I realized I was falling in love with her. Not because she was successful, not because she was beautiful, though she certainly was. I fell in love with her kindness, her strength, her vulnerability, the way she remembered little details, the way she cared about people even when she pretended not to, the way she trusted me. And that terrified me, because I had no idea if she felt the same. Then everything changed. For nearly 3 weeks, Claire became distant. She canceled plans repeatedly, stopped texting, barely came outside. The old walls were returning. I told myself not to take it personally, but it hurt. One night, I noticed the lights in her house still on after midnight. Something felt wrong. I walked over and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Finally, the door opened. Claire looked exhausted. Her eyes were red. Ethan, are you okay? She shook her head.
No.
That single word said everything. I stepped inside. The house looked chaotic. Documents covered the dining table. Coffee cups sat everywhere. Laptops glowed in dark corners. What happened? She sat down heavily. My company is in trouble. Over the next hour, she explained everything. Several major clients had left unexpectedly. Financial pressure was building. Employees depended on her. The responsibility felt crushing. And I didn't want you seeing me like this, she admitted. I frowned. Why? Because you're always steady. I laughed. Claire, I'm not steady. I just hide my stress better. A small smile appeared. Then tears followed. Real tears. Honest tears. I'm so tired, she whispered. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked truly vulnerable.
He sat beside her.
Close enough to support her. Far enough to respect her space. You don't have to carry everything alone. She stared at the floor. I've spent my whole life proving I can handle everything myself. Maybe that's the problem. She looked up. Our eyes met. And something shifted. Something neither of us could ignore anymore. A week later, she invited me to dinner. Not as neighbors. Not as casual friends. Something felt different. The restaurant was quiet and cozy. Halfway through the meal, she set down her fork. Ethan? Yeah. I need to tell you something. My heart immediately sped up. You can tell me. She smiled nervously. I think you're the safest person I've ever known. I wasn't expecting that. Yet somehow it meant more than any compliment I'd ever received. She took a deep breath. When my parents died, I stopped trusting people. I listened. When work became my whole life, I convinced myself I didn't need anyone. Her eyes found mine. Then one night during a storm, my alarm broke. I laughed softly. She laughed too. And somehow you became the person I look for every day. The room seemed to disappear around us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I finally said what had been living inside my heart for months. I've been looking for you too. Tears filled her eyes. Not from sadness. From relief. From hope. When dinner ended, we walked home beneath a sky full of stars. The air felt warm, peaceful. When we reached her driveway, neither of us wanted the evening to end. She looked at me. I was scared. Of what? Of needing someone. I nodded. I understand. No, she said quietly. I think you really do. Then she reached for my hand. Such a simple gesture. Yet it felt bigger than anything else. Our fingers intertwined. Neither of us let go. I don't know what happens next, she admitted. You don't have to. A smile spread across her face. I'd like to find out together. So would I. 1 year later, another storm rolled across the neighborhood. This time, Claire and I sat together on her porch watching lightning flash in the distance. The rain hadn't started yet. The air smelled fresh, peaceful. She leaned against my shoulder. Do you ever think about that night? The broken alarm? She laughed. The knock on your door. All the time. She smiled. Best decision I ever made. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders.
No.
She looked up.
No.
The best decision was refusing to leave. Her laughter filled the porch. Warm, comfortable, home. The first drops of rain began falling. Neither of us moved. A year earlier, a storm had brought a lonely woman to my doorstep. A woman carrying grief, fear, and more responsibility than anyone should carry alone. Now she wasn't alone anymore. And neither was I. Claire slipped her hand into mine. I squeezed it gently. As rain fell around us, I realized something important. Home isn't always a house. Sometimes it's a person. And no matter what storms waited ahead, I knew we'd face them together.